Hi, I'm Patti. I'm a jewelry designer here at Fire Mountain Gems and Beads, and today I'm going to be taking you through the 5th project in our Secrets of Wireworking series. That's this beautifully embellished Tree of Life suncatcher. In this project, we're going to be carrying forward the skill that you learned in project 2 of making flat spirals and learning a new skill of a figure-8 bail. Okay, so let's look at some of the materials in this project. I'm going to go ahead and set that aside a bit. So you can see that this is made largely of wire roots that turn it into a twisted trunk and then branches. Those are made of 24 gauge copper and 24 gauge silver-plated silver parawire. Those are attached to this stainless steel hoop. It's a 6-inch hoop. And then we'll be using some glass leaves, some seed beads, some flatbacks, and a cute little pewter owl bead. So the first step in making this project is to cut the wires that we're going to be using for the project. We're going to cut 12-inch lengths of both the silver and the copper. Okay, I think that's a good start. So we're going to start with this stainless steel hoop, and you'll notice that there's a little section of the hoop where there's a solder joint. I'm going to actually start my roots right before that. That way the solder joint gets hidden under the roots. So all of the pieces of the hoop that you're going to see later will be nice and clean. So let's start with 2 wires. I'm going to grab 1 copper and 1 silver. Okay, let me set the copper aside just for a second, and I'm going to wrap the silver wire around the frame 3 times. So I'm actually going to work upside down. I feel like it's easier to wrap that way. So I'm just going to take the tail, and right before that joint, I'm going to just wrap it 3 times, and I'm just using my fingers to wrap. And I'm going to bring the tail up through the center, and when I have it up through the center, I'm going to take my flush cutters, and I'm going to just snip off the tail on kind of the inside of the hoop where it won't be pokey. And then I'm just squishing those wraps together with my thumb and forefinger. The great thing about this project is it's very organic, so you don't need things to look perfect. From the wraps to the wires, you want it to be a little organic looking. So don't worry about perfection. Once I've got one of them wrapped on there like that, I'm going to take the copper wire, and right next to it, to the left, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to wrap around several times. Then I'm just going to squish those both together, just like that. And then right before you get to that juncture where you have the solder joint, I'm going to just loosely wrap these wires together to form a wrapped branch. So when I have a couple of wraps, I'm going to take one of the wires. It doesn't matter which one. It's very organic, and it's really up to your creativity exactly how you do this. But I'm going to grab some seed beads, probably about 6 of them, in different colors and sizes. So there's a couple of the root beer kind of color. There's a brown here. I'm going to put a couple of those on. And then a couple of the copper ones. I'm just going to let those fall against my twists. And then I'm going to take the wire, and right above where those seed beads are, I'm going to start twisting again, loosely and organically. You don't want it to look too perfect. And I'm going to make several more wraps. And then again, I'm going to add some more seed beads on in a different pattern. This time I'll use maybe 1 copper, several of the root beer ones, and just kind of let your creativity flow here. Just do whatever beads and patterns that you want. And it just gives the roots some interest in this tree of life. So right above the beads that I just let fall on, I'm going to twist again. And I'm going to twist up until I've taken up about maybe just over a third of the frame. So it's going just a little over a third of the diameter of the frame. Once I have that, I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and just make a couple of interesting bends in there somewhere, just to give it a little extra organic look. And then I'm going to leave the rest of the wire just straight. Then there's another type of root here. So we'll do a single wire root. So I'm just going to take a copper wire and flip it upside down because I feel like it's easiest to wrap that way, and just wrap around the frame several times. I'm going to squish those wraps together. And on the inside, I'm going to just snip off that tail. And at the very end, when you get them all wrapped on, you might want to go around all of these and just tuck in the tails with your chain nose pliers. Okay. So with this one, I'm going to do something very similar, but since we only have 1 wire here, I'm making some extra sharp bends or little loops to keep the beads in place. So I'm going to use my round nose pliers here and just make some interesting bends. We want it to be organic and not perfect. And a little ways up here. There's 2 different ways to do it. You can make a very sharp bend, and I'll make one here that's almost like a U-shaped bend all the way down and back up, and then put on my seed beads. Let's see, we'll do some of the dark brown this time. It's easier to pick them up off the mat sometimes than in your own hand. There's 3, I think I'll do 5 this time. 4, 5, and for the heck of it, let's pick up this little root beer one here. You want a constantly different pattern. So you see how the seed beads fell against that very sharp bend and will stay there? Then the other way to keep them into place is to just make a little loop. So I'm going to use the end of my round nose pliers and just very tightly loop the wire like that. And now they're going to stay on that little section. Then I will make some more bends, just interesting ones. Make another sharp bend where I'll put some more seed beads on and they'll stay. So there's really no rhyme or reason to how you make the bends. It's whatever appeals to you aesthetically. So I'm going to put on some of these copper seed beads. 1, 2, 3, and maybe a couple of the brown seed beads after that, just for a change up in pattern. Okay, so let them fall against that bend, and then I'm going to make another little loop at the top here. I could make a bend if I wanted. just so they stay on that section. And that's about 1/3 of the way across the frame, so I'm going to leave that how it is. So we've got our first couple of roots completed, and I'm just going to do this all the way across until I've done, I don't know, I'll probably cut about 10 or 12 of each wire and do a double twisted root every other one, something like that. So you'll end up with about, I'd say 15 roots across, just depending on what you want. Okay, so you can see now that I've got all of my roots created. Now in this version, I actually made more of the single roots and less of the double twisted roots, so there's more across. There's more like 20. But I've got them all wrapped onto the frame. I'm going to flip that upside down and they're actually going to be my roots. So I'm going to go ahead and spread them out. You want them pretty equally spread out. They don't have to be perfect. And you want them to take up about 1/3 of the total frame. So if you look at the frame in sections, this is about 1/3, and then we've got about 1/3 here and about 1/3 here. So I kind of want to localize them in about this much of the frame. So I'm just going to spread them out a little bit. Once you have them spread out about where you want them, I like to take my hand and kind of clamp them down with my non-dominant hand. And then with my dominant hand, I'm going to scoop them all together. To make the twisted trunk, get all of them between your thumb and forefinger, and kind of clamp them with your other hand here and splay them out a little bit and twist. And you're twisting gently and slowly. Some people like to make a very kind of gnarled twisted trunk. I made this one just a little bit that way, you can see. But first you have to get it pretty twisted, about to the center of the hoop or just past, okay? Once you've done that, you can kind of bend it around and create that gnarled bend. Keep twisting, but you don't want to go too far because we want to leave space to add that owl in the center. So at this point, I'm going to kind of push them all upward like this. So we have the beginnings of our kind of gnarled trunk. Then, to add our owl, he's a bead, so there's a hole right through the center of the owl. I'm going to, right above where it's kind of gnarled, I'm going to fan those out a bit. So I'm just making them just kind of flat. Then I'm going to find a wire that's going up the very center. You're just going to pick one. Let's see. So I've got a wire that's coming right through the center. I'm going to take my owl and just thread that onto that wire and let him fall to the bottom. Okay, so you have your owl right on top. And so I'm going to, at this point, take some of the wire. Before I twist the wire above the owl, I want to kind of fan it out around the owl. So I'm going to take my pliers and just some of the wire that's around the owl, I'm going to kind of fan it outward so it has a natural little place for the owl to be sitting. And I'm kind of curving it around the owl at the top. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to give the suggestion that the owl is kind of sitting inside of the tree. I think I'll do a little bit more. Just kind of curving that wire around the owl. You might want to make some kind of cross above him. Okay, once you have some of the wire curved around the owl, you're going to take all of the wires in your thumb and forefinger again, and you're going to continue twisting just a bit, not very much. And we can adjust the owl a bit more in a minute. Okay, so now that I have a little twist above the owl, I'm going to splay all of these wires out and they're going to become the branches. You want to splay them fairly evenly. And it just takes a minute, take your time. And this doesn't need to be perfect right now. It's just giving you an idea of which wires are going to end up where on the tree. And also you'll notice that like sometimes I've got several silver wires clumped up here. I've got several copper wires clumped up here. I'm going to move those around a little bit so they're a little more separated by color. So I don't really want too many copper or too many silver right together. And I can kind of adjust it as I go as well. Okay, that looks really good. So I'm going to adjust the owl at the end. I'm just going to go ahead and leave it like this for now. It's totally fine. And there's plenty of room once you get all the branches wired on. It's much easier to adjust that center part. Okay, so the next part of creating the tree of life is to start creating the branches. So the branches are much like the roots in that some of them have 2 wires and some of them have 1 wire, and it's totally up to you how many of each you want to do going across. We'll start with a double wire. So we're doing the same thing that we were doing before in that we're loosely and organically kind of twisting the first 2 wires that we're seeing here. Just a little bit. And then I'm going to take one of the glass leaves and let that fall onto one of the wires. Then I'm going to twist the wires again, pretty close to the leaf, just a couple of times. And I'm going to turn that leaf so it's kind of facing front. And it's okay to let the wire twist. You want it to look very branchy and organic. So there's our first leaf. Let's twist some more. I'm usually putting about 2 leaves on each branch. Some of them might have 3, some of them might have 1. And we're leaving some spaces between the leaves. If you look at our finished piece, you can see that the leaves are interspersed with spirals, which we're going to add on later. So we want to leave some natural spaces for those spirals to fill in. Okay, I've got some twist there. I think I'm going to put on one of these dark green leaves. I have 3 different colors of leaves here. I have kind of an olivine, I've got kind of an emerald, and then I've got kind of an emerald with a coating on it that looks a bit like an AB, which stands for Aurora Borealis. Okay, so I've let another leaf fall on there, and I'm just twisting the wires around each other on top of that again. And then I'm going to make a couple of more twists, but I'm not going to go all the way out to the edge of the frame. Being that this is a double twisted wire, I actually want to separate these 2 wires out before I wrap them to give it more of a branchy look. So I feel pretty good about that. Now before I wrap these on, I'm going to take my pliers and make some interesting bends so it looks more natural. Maybe like that. And then I'll wrap on one, and I'm doing it so it's taut, but not so tight that I'm pulling the trunk of the tree away from the center. Okay, let's go around. And then The second one here, I'm just going to splay out a little bit and wrap that as well, so it's taut but not pulling the trunk of the tree. I like to go around 3 times, bring it up the center, in the middle of the hoop, and then snip that off. Okay, so let's make a single branch next. I think we'll make a silver one out of this wire. And you can push these wires out of the way if they're in the way of what you're working on. And since it's a single one, I'm going to start making little bends kind of near the trunk, just making it interesting looking. And so I've got a leaf here and a leaf here, so I think I'm going to put one about right in the center. So I'm going to make one of those little loops in the wire. I'm going to use one of these coated emerald leaves. Let that fall against the loop. And then I'm making a second loop on the top, and that keeps that in place there. And then some more interesting bends. And I want them to be kind of different directions and different sizes and shapes. And then maybe out here towards the edge of the hoop, I will add on another leaf. Another way to add on the leaf, you can make a loop, a leaf, and a loop. Or you can put on a leaf like this. Let it fall towards kind of the last bends. And then take the wire and wrap it kind of around the leaf under. So you have a wrap around the leaf that's keeping it in place. Then I'll wrap that around the frame. And I'm going to continue making these until all of my wires are used up in any order that I want. Okay, we're almost finished with the branches. Let's just do the last couple of branches. So I think I will do a twisted copper and silver one here. And just kind of twisting organically. Adding on a leaf, letting that fall against my twist, twisting above the leaf. Twisting organically a bit more. And then I'm going to separate those out, add a few bends to each of those wires. And then wrap them on the frame so they're taut. Snip that off. Okay, so we've created the roots, we've made our twisted trunk and added our owl, we've made our branches. The next thing to do is our little owl. If you look at the finished piece, I've colored him. So he's got a brown body and some really pretty neon green eyes with a little flat back crystal in the center on his belly. So, real easy way to color this bead is to use a permanent marker. So I'm using a brown marker and just coloring in his body around the sides as well as the top on either side. And the marker dries really fast, so it doesn't take long to do this. And then I'm coloring his eyes with the fluorescent green. So he has these glowing eyes looking out at the tree. I love that. Great. The little details really make the piece. Okay, we'll go ahead and glue the flat back onto the owl. So we'll use a little bit of DevCon 5-minute epoxy. Squeeze out just a little bit from each side. Doesn't take very much at all. Okay. Then I want to make sure, and the part of the epoxy that I'm getting, because it's such a small amount, needs to be part that's really mixed well. and just put a dot right in the center of the owl. You don't want to put too much because you don't want the glue splooshing out and showing. Then I'll take my crystal katana. This is a great tool to position flatbacks with. Pick up a flatback, and I'm just going to put it right in the center of the owl. And let it dry for 5 minutes, and then it'll be time to go ahead and continue working on that project. The next thing to do is to add the spirals that adorn the tree. So you can see we have spirals. They're little closed flat spirals in copper and silver. So let's make some of those and add them to the tree. So I'm going to start with a bit of the 24 gauge copper pair wire. It's the same wire we used for the rest of the tree. And I'll take off just a bit, 6 or 7 inches. And then I'll make a spiral. So to make a spiral, as we saw in project 2, you're going to want to start with your round nose pliers, get the very tip of the wire, and make a little hook. You're going to go almost all the way around. Once you've gotten there, you're going to take your flush cutters, and with the flush side against the piece you're keeping, you're cutting off the first couple of millimeters of that hook. So you have a nice rounded hook. Then put your round nose pliers back in and continue around loosely and let the wire overlap itself around the outside of that loop. Then I will take my nylon jaw pliers and I will clamp the loop and just continue pushing the wire right against the loop to create a spiral. Just keep going around in a circle. Until you have the desired size spiral. I'm going to go around several more revolutions. I want a pretty good size spiral so it will show up in the tree. Then to add that to the tree, just find a negative space in the tree that you want to fill with a spiral. So I think that this would be a really good space for a spiral here. So I'm going to position the spiral where I want it to be in the tree. Kind of clamp it down with the thumb and forefinger here, and then just start wrapping down that branch. And just keep going all the way around until you have as many spirals in your tree as you would like. All right, now that we have all of the desired spirals woven onto the branches, the last 2 steps are to adjust the owl a little bit and then add on that figure-8 bail. So to adjust the owl, really all I'm doing is with my fingers taking the outside couple of wires on either side and just making sure that they curl around the owl a bit. You can take your chain nose pliers and work those a little bit. You just want to give him a little nest to kind of sit in. You can pull them up and around just a little bit, just to give you the suggestion of being in a little knot in the tree. That's pretty good. Okay. Next, let's go ahead and add the figure-8 bail. So first thing we're going to do is figure out where we want the bail. So we're going to find kind of the center of the tree. And where do we want the bail? It's either going to be right here or right here. I'm feeling like this is a good spot for the bail, right here above this silver spiral. Then I'm going to take 2 lengths of wire, one of the silver and one of the copper, the same wire we've been using, the 24 gauge. And I'm going to go up several inches. I want a little bit of a tail. And then I'm just going to kind of loosely twist them around the frame together. Like that. They don't need to be perfect. It's kind of a messy bail look. So we've got the wires crossing over each other in kind of a teardrop shape here around the frame with some extra space here. Well, a little bit of space. Then I'm going to leave this tail here for now. And then I'm going to take these wires and just with my thumb going to create an opposite teardrop like that. Bring the wires behind and then back through the same space in the frame. Kind of pull those up and around. And so we've got a figure-8 going here. And then on the same side, we're just going to continue to do that. I'm going to do it a few times until I kind of run out of wire. So I'm just kind of pulling it around, making a figure-8. Then I'm going to take one of the tails and I'm going to start wrapping it around the middle of those loops. I'm going to go around twice, just like that. And then I'm just going to go ahead and cut those tails off kind of right in the center of the loops. Okay? Then I'll take my chain nose pliers and just tuck those in slightly so they're not sticking out. Then I'll take the remaining tail and I'm going to go over those wraps that are already existing several times. Okay, and I want to come around to the back side of the piece. See, here's the front of the tree. I want to end up on the back side. I'm just going to snip those tails and take my chain nose pliers and make sure they're really nice and tucked in. Then I'll just adjust my branches however I like them. Make sure my roots are adjusted how I like them. And there you have your Tree of Life suncatcher. So in this project, we've learned to make this messy bale, to wire on spirals, and to make a Tree of Life. In the next project, which will be project 6 of the Secrets of Wireworking series, we're going to be making these hammered spiral earrings. In this project, you're going to be learning to make open spirals, wire on embellishments, and planish the wire flat. Thank you for being with me here today. I'm so glad that you were here in this project, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.